Hello, welcome back to the Accountable Podcast, ADHD Business Success. Still didn't think of a new name, but we'll get there. I'm Ian Tenenbaum, and I'm joined with Josh Budd.
Oh, hello.
We're talking about all things ADHD in business. So I believe, Josh, you said you have some questions for
Yeah,
us to talk about.
I thought it'd be a good idea if we just dive into a couple questions. You don't know what they are. Maybe some of them will catch you off guard, make you think a little bit, and see where it goes.
Yeah, let's do it. What do you got?
All right. All right. I'll start off with an easy one. You should know this because it's about you. Uh, the question I have is, when did you first realize you had ADHD? Was it a gradual realization, or was it an oh shit moment? Like a wow, I really do have something here.
Well, I grew up as somebody who was always called, ADD, so ADD. But when I was a kid in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't really something that was treated and considered serious and a real thing in a way. It was just kind of a joke. Oh, he's hyper. So it never got addressed. And then in college, I was failing out of school, and then I had to go to see a psychologist to get some study skills and figure out what's going on with me. And then I was officially diagnosed for ADD at the time. This is like 1998, so like 26 years ago. And then since then, though, I until 20 years later, I didn't actually do anything. I went back to college. I kind of figured stuff out, and then I went through my life. So it was about 37 years old that I kind of got diagnosed again and was like,
Hmm.
hey, I think this is a real thing now. And I think I'm missing a lot of, how this is impacting me. So I probably should look into this. And that was like maybe 7, 8 years ago. And my life has definitely changed since diagnosis number two, because I actually started doing stuff for it. Yeah.
What's the first thing that you implemented, or the first major change you can remember making that made a positive impact on you once you realized, okay, this is affecting me?
The original reason was because I thought I needed medication, and I just got diagnosed and started taking medication. And that was it for a couple of years. It was kind of just like, okay, I'm medicated now. But then I would talk to my therapist or coaches about other stuff. And so that was a big improvement, but not everything. It made things a little better, but then it still didn't fix all my problems. So there was a process of a few years of figuring out, okay, what else do I need besides medication?
Interesting. I suppose that segues well into the second question that I was going to ask is, obviously you have a lot of clients that sort of, I assume you probably have people that come and go. You have a first initial session with a lot of clients. What is the first thing that you say is the foundation piece that you have to get stuck into? What's the first thing that you aim to target every time you speak to a new person? It's the first session. What's the first thing you're covering?
Well, I do have a process of going through a bit of onboarding. So the two things that are really critical are, what's the vision, what's the goal, where's somebody going in a year, 2 years, 3 years, because that's really the driving force. And a lot of people aren't clear, aren't sure. So if they're not
Mhm.
clear on where they're going and their main goals, then it's going to be very difficult to get there. The ones that are, we're able to use that as a starting point, and then we say, okay, so then what's preventing you from getting there? What are the things that keep coming up that are persistent, the blockers? What are the challenges? And how does that show up in your day to day? So it's one thing to say I'm disorganized. It's another thing to say, when I have a project due on Monday, I struggle to get what I need done by Tuesday, and I'm scrambling Wednesday. That's much more specific than I'm. So what
Mhm.
we do is we start breaking down. Yes, these are common challenges that we all face, but what does it look like for you? How does it show up in your life? And what are the ways it's impacting you day to day? Let's start there. So we know what we're trying to work on and fix.
Yeah. You mentioned goals as like the first thing really that you work on, and you mentioned how it's a driving force. Elaborate on that. And obviously I understand the importance of it, but I'm sure there'll be people listening, maybe, we're only on episode 2, but you never know, who don't understand the importance of having a goal that's really prominent as a driving force. So elaborate on why that's important for people with ADHD.
Well, yeah. So I think we could spend a whole episode talking about goals and strategy around goals and
Yeah.
philosophy and efficacy. So the way I like to do it is starting with more of a 10-year vision, so it's clear on where they see themselves going. And then we back into like a 3-year vision. So how do you know if you're on track? And just those two alone can help people get some clarity and have a different perspective of time. So we don't have to do everything today for those, right? But we do need to take steps. And then as we backtrack, we might have goals for a year from now. And again, that's not stuff we have to do every single day. So a lot of us with time blindness, which means we don't really have a good relationship to time, it it's something that is difficult for us. So we tend to think now and not now. And when we think about goals, we tend to think about all the things we need to do today, this week. They immediately overwhelm us. And how
Hmm.
am I ever going to achieve these goals? It's too much pressure. Now I have anxiety. So what we want to do is like stretch that out. So we've got our long term, our medium term, and then, when we're in a year, we can start saying, okay, so what would the next 90 days look like? And by doing that, we're right there in the sweet spot where it's enough time to have some real accomplishments and to make some real changes, but it's not this week or next week, right? Because when we focus too much in too short a time, we crash the system. But if we don't do any planning, it's 3 months from now and we're still spinning our wheels. So what we're trying to do with this goal setting framework and methodology and the way we approach it is build the ability and the muscle to kind of toggle between a real long term, a midterm, a short term, and an immediate. Like when we do time blocking and daily planning, it's 24 to 48 hours typically.
Hmm.
But that has to align to the 90-day goal, which aligns to the 12-month. And all of that type of planning is really difficult for us with ADHD. It's a lot of executive functioning. There's a lot of decisions. It can feel overwhelming. So when we start just all that, figuring out how do we get clear on all those different milestones, like that in itself can be a big relief for people because then they don't feel as overwhelmed or unclear, and it starts to feel manageable. Because when you look at 24 to 48 hours, that's manageable, right? If you look at all your goals on a big list, it's completely overwhelming. So we're just turning the volume down on some of that overwhelm, and that allows people to start following through one thing at a time and chipping away. That kind of gets the gears moving.
Yeah. I think the key thing there is clarity. Is that's why goals are so important. That's what a goal gives you. Uh, I know I'm personally guilty of when I don't have a let's say a 90-day goal, something that's in the sweet spot. If there's something too far away, I won't do it. But if there's something in the sweet spot, and I'm clear on what that is, everything I'm doing is intended to go towards that direction. When I don't have that, I'm going 100 miles per hour in the wrong direction, left, right. But the even when you said it, it's really important that you have some way of being reminded of what it is. Even if you like slap it on your fridge and say this is the most important. This is what gets me out of bed every day. If you need that kind of thing, it prevents you from veering off and going in a different direction when you know exactly what your goal is, and every single thing you do, like what we've been working on with the OKRs, we know that a task only makes it to the official task list if it is in line with one of those three goals that we've set for a 90-day sprint, and anything else is completely irrelevant right now and shouldn't even be considered. And I just think it's massive. It's so massive for people with ADHD that.
Yeah, well, what you're touching on is the goals and the clarity give you a basis or a framework or a structure to have boundaries and say no. So one of our biggest challenges and struggles with ADHD is everything has equal importance because it's all really valuable and it's very difficult to prioritize because to say that we're going to do this one now and not that one can feel like that one's never going to happen, that other one, and it's telling us ourselves that it's not important, but then we fight against ourselves and say it is important, and if I don't do it now it's never going to get done, but then now it's competing with other, and then before you know it we've exhausted ourselves in doing mental gymnastics that we don't want to do any of it anymore.
Mhm.
So
100%.
by having a little bit of a structure we can have less questioning about whether it fits or not, and we can have more boundaries and say no and free up our
More
energy
energy.
for the stuff that
Exactly.
does matter, right? Yeah.
I read a quote today that said executive function is like gold dust, and it basically means you only get a certain amount of that powder every day, and you want to make sure you've got everything is designed around you beautifully so that you don't have to spend any of that gold dust on stupid stuff like trying to organize this or trying to find where this is. If you're organized and you have systems in place, you'll be good. You can really spend that gold dust on things that actually matter, achieving the goals that you've actually set in the first place. So, yeah.
Yeah, you got me
All right.
thinking like it's like having a phone and you're on a trip and you're using the phone for music the whole time you're on a hike. And then you get to the
You get lost.
car for the GPS and the battery's dead and now
Yeah.
you are stuck and you don't have a charger
Mhm.
and your phone's dead because you used it all for music and now oh shit, how am I going to get home? I don't have my GPS. So we have to be really careful on where we use our energy and drain our battery, and I feel like that's one of the biggest starting points with clients is like what's draining your energy, what's stealing your
Mm,
energy, and how do
mm.
we cut that off a little bit because we can't do this other stuff that's really important if this other stuff is stealing all your energy. So that's a big part of starting together also.
Yeah, cool. Right, bit of a shift now. Um, this is more of a what's your opinion on this kind of question, and it's as I'm sure you'll know, um, so many people with ADHD are entrepreneurs, and so many entrepreneurs have ADHD. I think the statistic from a report is something crazy, like one third of entrepreneurs have
Yeah.
ADHD, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Why do you think this is? What is it about being an entrepreneur that aligns so well with the ADHD mind?
Well, funny enough, I actually have it in a presentation somewhere where I lay it out. There are a few specific um, characteristics that lend itself to entrepreneurship, ADHD. One is creativity. So
Hmm.
entrepreneurship requires a lot of creativity, innovation, doing things differently. It's a lot of risk taking. So that's very
Mm.
stimulating and exciting for us. So we don't shy away from it like a lot of other neurotypicals. We lean into it. And then there's also, um, uh, what was the other part? The other part is so there's creativity, the risk taking, and the autonomy, the independence. So we love having our independence and autonomy. Now, because those three things make us great entrepreneurs, is why we go into it. But the catch is the double edged sword is that
Yeah, it's definitely a double-edged sword.
entrepreneurship also requires us to do a lot of our own admin, a lot of our own
Hmm.
planning, a lot of our own accountability, a lot of our own time management. So even though ADHD makes us perfect for entrepreneurship, there's this huge amount of challenges that then make it difficult. So it's this catch 22 a lot of us find ourselves in, where we feel like we don't fit into a salary job, and then we don't fit in, and then we can't be successful in entrepreneurship. And that's, why I started this whole business. And there's studies that show that like up to 60% of entrepreneurs with ADHD struggle in their business, or some stat we could look up. But it's because of all the other stuff that comes with it. So,
Mhm.
I've struggled with this over the years, and that's how I came to learning about all this, because I always felt confused, where I had all these great ideas, I had a lot of energy, I was able to do half of building a business like really, really well, but then the other half I would struggle with, and it would totally, steal my confidence, make me question my abilities, make me think I'm stupid, and then make me think I need to go get a job. And then I do go get a job, but I can't keep a job because I'm not cut out for a salary employee, because of that has even more logistics and admin. And I'm like, so where do I fit in? And that's like what a lot of my clients are going through right now, which is like,
Mhm.
you know, if I could just figure out a lot of this executive function planning stuff, I know I'm capable of building this business. But a lot of time we can't get out of our own way, and we don't learn about this stuff growing up, or after college. It's like we're just kind of thrown out in the deep end, and a lot of
Yeah.
people with ADHD are struggling right now. So it
I think
sucks.
that's such an important point as well, is, and I'm sure this partially explains why you personally have so many unreal results of transformations from with clients, is because there's such a huge jump, right? If you can, like you said, get the executive function down, get the organization down, get the systems down, get them back in control of their own nervous system, those sorts of things, they really go from being really, really hindered to, if they've got those things down, they jump huge amounts. It's
Yeah,
not
it's
like
like
one.
trying to run a marathon with cinder blocks tied to your legs, and then
Exactly.
somebody
You need
comes
to let go
over
of
and
them.
shows you that you can actually break those off. It's like,
Yeah,
oh my God, like I can run so fast now. So,
yeah,
not to
it
say it's
is.
so easy, but
No.
there are, this is why I started this business. And I was almost like mad when I was, 40, 41 years old, learning constantly how much I didn't know about ADHD and managing it. And I was so excited on one hand, but I was so pissed, because I was like, oh shit, if I knew this like 20 years ago, like why did I not know this 15 years ago? Like, oh my God, this, because a lot of the stuff that I'm learning and I'm teaching and helping clients with isn't, it's difficult and challenging to make the changes and to implement and practice, but over time, when it's like building a new muscle, like it is possible. And we just need more information, and that's, this podcast will be great, like getting more information out there to people that show them that there are solutions. And it's not easy, but a lot of these things are simple, not easy, simple. So it's not complicated, but it's not easy, because we're changing some of our lifelong patterns. So
Yeah,
yeah.
100%. All right. Final question I have for you is that I think this will be useful for people. My question is, your line of work now, and especially now you've picked up a lot of clients, you've got a lot of traction. Your calendar is probably full every day, and you've got people who rely on you to tell them, or to guide them through problems that you have had yourself in the past. And my question is really, how do you make sure you prevent those off days, right? Because you've got a lot of people who are waiting on you to make progress in their business. What happens if you have an off day? You don't have the freedom to just cancel all your things anymore, because there's a lot of people that rely on you. So what is the main thing that you do, or a couple of things that you can put down to that prevent you from having those days where you just can't do anything today? Because we all have them.
Yeah, no, that's such a great question. Yeah, so I definitely work very hard to limit those types of days and keep them contained. And I'll start there. So things like being very intentional about my calendar so that I don't end up way over packed. And if I do,
Sorry.
compensating by kind of letting the air out after, maybe taking, having a couple days where I don't fill my calendar. And I do a lot of, I've given myself permission and a lot of the grace to unplug. And one of the biggest challenges for us with ADHD and entrepreneurship is that there's always more to do and we have a million ideas and it can never feel like enough. So I kind of like the analogy of a dam where you got this heavy river, powerful river, but the dam needs to be constantly maintained so the river doesn't blow the town over and it doesn't ruin everything there, and then the dam can generate the energy, and if the dam's intact, the energy just keeps being provided, right? If that dam broke, the village and town below and all the other stuff would just blow away and we'd have no energy, right? So I think of it like, what's my version of my dam that keeps my energy, there, and that way, that minimizes the chance that I'll have days that are totally off. But then on the flip side, when I do have days that are off or I'm sick or things, I just communicate well with clients, and the rare times I've had to, I just message them, find a new time, check in if they need anything, and reschedule it and be proactive about it and own it and say, I'm sick today, I got COVID or whatever. Can we move it to this time, or I'll make it up to you, or I'll give you an extra time. So it's twofold. One is being very thoughtful about how much I can handle and being able to start thinking ahead. Like, next week, I'm probably not going to be able to do that on Tuesday because my morning's already getting full. And if I put that in there, my day is going to be too packed, and I'm not going to be able to show up well for clients because I'm going to be, too overwhelmed. Let me put it in on Thursday where I have much more space. That'll feel so. Practicing thinking ahead and planning makes a lot of this much easier. But then, of course, when things come up, or maybe my son has an issue at school and I need to go to school, or I need to take someone to a doctor's appointment, or I need to go, just as much notice as possible, people are fine. I think a lot of us with ADHD wait to the last minute, and we think, let's say we wake up sick and we're like, we have a meeting at 2 and we're like, oh, I'll be fine. And then all day you're telling yourself, I'll be fine, I'll be fine, I'll be fine. And then at 1:45 you realize you're not fine and you email to cancel or reschedule it, and everyone's pissed, right? That's very different than if you wake up and right away at 8 a.m. say, hey, not feeling well, can we move this to tomorrow? You've given a lot more notice. People respect that. So yeah, I think there's a lot more to this. We could talk about this in a whole episode on time management, I bet.
Hmm. Yeah, it's one of the things. The reason I ask is because it's since I would say 3 months ago I stopped taking medication, and I'm just pretty much cold turkey now.
Wow.
And that's the one thing I always
That's another
found.
episode I want to talk about, by the way. A whole nother
Yeah,
episode on medication.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely a big conversation to be had there. That's the one thing I found that previously when I was running my first business. I was non-medicated then. I had a stint for about a year where I didn't take medication. And what I found was I thought I was super productive in that year. And when I reflected at the end of the year, I realized I just did every day the things that I wanted to do, not the things that really had to be done or move the needle forward. So when I reflected, I was like, "Well, I know I've done so much. I worked huge, I worked 11, 12-hour days. And then it got to a point where I was like, okay, I've actually just gone in 100 different directions and haven't done anything. And I realized that the biggest difference from when I was on medication to when I'm off medication is those off days. So it was something that I really had to work on for the past, especially in that year, and now even in the past 3 months. The two things that I found the most
Oh, wait,
useful.
but you're saying when you're not on medicine, the off days are harder.
Yeah, the off days come more
Oh,
frequently,
right. Yeah.
is what I'm saying. Yeah, and now, yeah, I haven't had an off day in months, and I think that's because of two reasons. One thing is I minimized all of the things that drain my energy, all the things that I hate doing, or that really mean that the rest of the day or the next day is just a real pain. Minimize those as much as possible. For example, I never have meetings the first in the morning. They always drain me, they distract me, they derail me. Every single meeting I have now is past 12 p.m.
Well, we're
And
never going to meet in the morning because your
yeah,
morning, I
it's
think, is
perfect.
is your morning's 3 a.m. for me or something.
Yeah, I have nothing but sympathy for you when I work out the time difference and realize that we're speaking at like 8 a.m. for you. But I think if you
Yeah,
spoke to
yeah,
me
yeah.
at 8 a.m., I don't think you'd like me.
No, I'm the
The second
opposite.
thing,
I'm good at 6, 7, 8 a.m. I don't want to be working at like 4, 5, 6 p.m.
really interesting, perfect synergy then. The
Yeah,
second thing for me is, and I think a lot of people have this problem, is reducing guilt when you're, just accepting. I know I have all these things that I want to do. I know I have all these ideas that I want to act on and fulfill and bring to fruition,
right, right.
but
Not beating
it's
yourself
not
up.
going to
Yeah,
happen. And yeah, just it's really important not to
being
do
okay
that. And
with
if you
that. Yeah.
set, even if at the start of the day you set 10 tasks and a couple things derail you, and you have 10 minutes longer of a break than you needed, just accepting that I have actually made progress today, and just reflecting back on that and saying all it takes is 1% every day. In my head, I want to go 10% improvements every day, but it's never going to happen. So that
Well,
was massively
we tend to
important.
focus a lot more on what we didn't do than what we did do, which is a
Yeah,
problem. So,
yeah, 100%.
yeah. So I guess we'll wrap it up. Was there any other questions for this time, or this will
Uh,
conclude our pod number 2?
this will conclude pod number 2. I think next week we should. Well, let's decide what should we speak about next week. I think
Well, I
medication is a
feel
good
like
one
the
to get into.
medication is a hot topic that keeps coming up with people, and everyone seems to
Mm,
be curious about it and compare and kind of comparing notes. So, I'm happy to talk about what I've learned with medication and
mhm.
what I'm hearing out there in the market. And then I'd be curious. I didn't know you were not on medication right now. I know you said you started medication when you were 10,
Yeah.
but I thought you were still medicated. So I'd be curious what happened all along those glorious 12 or 13 or 14 years.
Well, if you want to hear, you'll have to join back next week.
And there he is. There he goes. Awesome. What a
All
great
right.
little marketer you are.
Salesperson.
All right. Well, then we'll wrap it up. We will be seeing you guys next week. Thanks for joining. Oh, and
Thank you.
what are we supposed to say at the end again? Like,
That's
subscribe.
this is your job now.
Well, I don't know how to do it though.
Hit the notification bell. That's what you got to say, man.
Oh, yeah. And then like, and then what about subscribe?
It's their choice, I suppose, isn't it? But I
Well,
don't
I
know.
guess,
It wasn't
yeah.
on podcast platforms. I think it's different.
Oh, right. But on YouTube, they should like and subscribe and all that stuff. Yeah. All right. We'll see you guys next week. See ya.
See ya.